In the vast, sun-scorched expanse of Solara Prime, water was more precious than gold. The planet's surface was a constant blaze of heat, and only those who could pay steep prices could access the carefully rationed water supplies. In a modest corner of the bustling city, nestled between towering steel buildings and colorful markets, stood a small cafe known as the Solara Café. Though modest, it was a popular spot for locals and travelers alike to escape the harsh conditions for a while. One particularly blistering afternoon, Kaln arrived at the Solara Café. Kaln was a Therian, a species known for their shimmering, almost translucent skin that pulsed softly in dim light. He was a weary traveler, his usual glow dimmed by exhaustion and dehydration. After wandering Solara Prime's dusty streets for days, his water reserves had finally run dry. Kaln stepped into the cafe, his presence drawing some stares from the customers. His tired eyes searched the room until he spotted the manager, a stern man named Gareth, who stood behind the counter. "Please," Kaln said in a quiet, raspy voice. "I need water. Just a small amount to get me through." Gareth looked him over with a hard expression. He wasn't a cruel man, but in this world, survival was about making hard choices. Water was reserved for paying customers, and without money, Kaln was just another burden on his business. "I'm sorry," Gareth said, his tone as cold as the water Kaln craved. "Water's for paying customers only. If you don't have credits, I can't help you." Kaln's shoulders slumped. He had no credits left, only the clothes on his back and an empty water pouch. He turned slowly and headed back toward the door, his hope flickering like a candle in the wind. But just then, a young waitress named Emilia stepped forward. She had been watching the interaction with a heavy heart. She knew the rules, knew Gareth's stance on giving handouts, but she couldn't ignore the desperation in Kaln's eyes. Grabbing a small parcel of food, Emilia hurried outside and found Kaln slumped against the wall, his breathing shallow. "Here," she whispered, offering him the food. "It's not much, but it'll keep your strength up." Kaln looked at her, his large, dark eyes filled with surprise and gratitude. "Thank you," he murmured, taking the parcel with trembling hands. "I won't forget this kindness." Emilia smiled softly. "Safe travels, wherever you're headed." With one last grateful look, Kaln tucked the food away and disappeared into the crowded streets. Weeks passed, and life at the Solara Café continued as usual. Emilia had nearly forgotten about the encounter when one evening, a fierce sandstorm swept over Solara Prime. The city's power grid faltered, leaving the district in darkness. Water lines were cut off, and panic quickly spread as people scrambled to conserve what little water they had left. Inside the Solara Café, Gareth was visibly tense. Supplies were dwindling fast, and without fresh water deliveries, they'd be forced to close within a day. The situation was dire. As he pondered their options, the door creaked open, and in walked Kaln. He was no longer the weary, desperate traveler they remembered. This time, he appeared with a small group of aliens by his side. Each of them carried heavy packs filled with water and provisions. Kaln's gaze swept the room until he found Emilia, who was standing by the counter in surprise. "I told you I'd remember your kindness," he said, a warm light glowing in his alien eyes. "My people heard of the storm and the hardships here. We brought enough supplies to share." Gareth stared at the group, a mix of shock and relief on his face. The cafe patrons looked on in awe as the aliens began distributing water and food to everyone in the room. Gareth finally found his voice. "Thank you," he stammered, shame creeping into his expression. "We didn't know how desperate things would get." Kaln's gaze was gentle but firm. "We all need help sometimes. It's not weakness to rely on others." Emilia beamed, her heart swelling with pride as she watched Kaln and his friends share their supplies. The cafe was transformed into a haven amidst the chaos, a place where strangers could find refuge and kindness. For the next few days, until the storm finally subsided, Kaln and his group stayed at the Solara Café, helping everyone who sought shelter there. When the power and water were restored, and the city returned to its usual rhythm, Kaln and his companions prepared to leave. Before departing, he turned to Emilia one last time. "Thank you for reminding me that compassion exists even in the hardest places. Emilia smiled. Safe travels, Kaln. I hope you find kindness wherever you go. With a final nod, Kaln and his group left, vanishing into the crowded streets once more. In the months that followed, the Solara Café became known as a place of compassion, a sanctuary for weary travelers and locals alike. Gareth, humbled by the experience, began to offer aid to those in need when he could, remembering that acts of kindness had a way of coming back, often when least expected. And from that day forward, the Solara Café was a beacon of hope in the heart of Solara Prime, a reminder that even in the harshest of worlds, kindness could thrive.